Hey guys, what's up? Thanks for joining this video. I wanted to do a unique video today that kind of shows how the painting developed while looking at the finished product. And so this is obviously kind of a mountain painting. Blue sky on mountain, green foliage, trees, and got some rocks here at the bottom that turned out actually pretty well. Those are kind of actually hard to do. This painting, what makes this painting unique, a couple of things is this painting was done prior to COVID. So if you want to know what life looked like before COVID, well, here you go. This was actually done on September the 28th of the year 2020. So I started this on that day, probably finished it in a couple hours. I've had it in my vault ever since then, and an online friend of mine wanted it, and so sold. So that happened just within a few minutes. So this one really turned out really great. So let me just start here by just kind of going over it with a brush. This is a clean dry. Actually, I just picked this up at Hobby Lobby today, brand new. So I'll be able to kind of hit it and it not alter the painting at all. And of course it's dry because it's 34 years old. So with the skies, you start with your base color of a sky, whatever color that may be. Maybe it's light purple, maybe it's light blue or dark blue. You can see here where it started dark at the top and it became lighter as the painting went down. Adding what Bob Ross calls the illusion of depth. So without the illusion of depth, your painting is going to, it may look like a drawing. It's going to look very flat. It's not going to have the dimensions, the settings as they're coming to you, like you would see in nature, like you see anywhere else. So that's why the sky's always done first, because that's going to be the furthest thing in the back. And then what I like to do is draw a little sun or an image of a sun. And you do that very easily just by getting your palette and then with your little finger, just tap into the white color, to where it gets at the very, very tip of your finger. It will naturally create like a little oval there. And then you just dab that once. And then carefully blend it. Depending on how bright you want your sun, you can just stick your finger in the white or the yellow, and you just set it right there into the painting, like so. And then just let it stay if you want it really bright. If you want to fade it in the back, then go over it with your brush. So that's how the sky was developed. The clouds, that's done usually with the fan brush, because it looks like a fan. And so you would go straight into your white cloud color, and here I've got some other clouds, maybe some kind of a rainstorm is coming this way, or it's already passed, so you would use like a dark blue with that. And so you just circle those in, the way we show you on the video, the way you've seen other painters do it. And so with the white clouds, I don't do a whole lot of blending because I want them to stand out. I want them to be able to be seen. You can blend them all together and just have a cloudless sky, because that happens too, right? And that's just as beautiful. Or if you want some clouds, you just take them up with the tip of the brush and then lightly blend it in. Because if you start blending, it's going to blend that cloud to where it just looks like something way far in the distance. And so that's how the clouds are made. And then probably for best practice, maybe the sun is the very last thing to do, and then that gives you your final blend. When I do the sun, I take it out and I blend, through all sides of the sun, the circle. Next is your mountains. If you're having mountains in your painting, for me, mountains took the most amount of practice. I don't want to call them complicated, but for me, it took a lot of tries in order to get the mountains just right. The secret to the mountains, I don't have my palette done just yet because I'm about to start something, but I've not done the colors yet. The secret to the mountains, and as you see, Bob Ross, almost called him Dr. Bob, but I guess he is in a way the Doctor of Arts. So you've got your oil here painting, for example, and you just take your knife, and once you have your painting, divvied out from the main dollop, just cut. I don't know how well you can you're literally just going to take the knife and just run through it. And you've really got to do this in order to know what I'm talking about, but you're going to have this thin little roll of paint at the very tip of the knife. And with that, you're using black, some brown, maybe some blue, and you're creating the shapes of the mountain. And then you want to give it, a side to it. And so that's how the mountains are made. You start with that thin little roll of paint, and you'll have to reapply that as you create the different series of sets of peaks. And then from there, you're going to go into, really, you could just take that same mountain color that you're doing and just add a little white to it. And then that's going to create your snow at the top of the mountains. Mountains don't necessarily have to have snow on them, but if there are high peaks, if they're in Alaska, if they're in Colorado, or wherever, you know, it's probably going to have some snow on it, and they just look amazing, I think, don't they? And so that's how you do the snow. You get that little thin roll of paint at the very tip of your knife, and you're going to just roll it out, and it is just barely grazing. It's just grazing the top of that mountain background that you've made, and you will see where the paint starts to separate, and it almost looks like you're doing it wrong, but you're actually doing it right. And that's what the break in the paint is, given that illusion of snow. You know, you could make it perfectly white, you know, with no breaks in it. It may look unnatural. I've actually not tried it, I don't think, but that's how the breaks in the snow are made. It's just from your knife that's just grazing the top of it, and it's creating some breaks, creating that illusion of snow. And then on the other side of the mountain, you know, you want to give it a little bit of shadow, and so you may run a darker color through it. But you can see here where you can see the direction of the snow. And then this one here, I took it another direction, you know, because again, with nature, it's not exactly cookie cutter, that's what makes it so beautiful. And so you can see where there's a mountain here, here's one over here, here's one that got a little weird shape to it. And that's okay, because that's how they're usually made, right? And so this one here cuts through, and then this one breaks through here. And so as the mountain goes down, we don't necessarily need to see the breaks in the snow at the bottom. Why? Because this is afar off. And so you're going to just stop with the snow around here, and then you're going to take the brush, and then you're going to pull this down. You're going to pull your mountains down. You're basically taking the sides of them, you know, the direction of where these were going, and you're pulling it down, and then you're going to tap the bottom of the mountain, and then maybe even whisk it up, and that's going to create this illusion of mist, as Bob Ross calls. So it may not really be mist, like don't be trying to go after like fog. I mean, I guess you could make some fog there, that'd be pretty cool. But what it's doing is it's just pushing that mountain back, like this is in the distance. And then you're going to start working on your foreground now, which is going to be background trees. You could use almost any color. Black, some brown, some very, very dark green. I wouldn't even do dark green. I would do black and brown. And then, because those trees are way far in the distance. So you're not going to see maybe the color of the foliage if it's way in the back. So it makes sense that the trees that are up front, those are the ones that are going to have the color. If all of these were the same color, those colors are going to muddy together, and it's going to produce what's going to look like a very amateur painting. So you want the illusion of distance. You want the distance, and you want the foreground to be in layers. You want to build upon itself. So your background trees, I wouldn't do green. I would do some dark brown and some black mixed together. That's how I would do that. And then you can start adding a little bit of color to them. And then you're going to take one of your liner brushes, something like that, and then maybe you're going to drop in some branches and some stems and trunks. All right, try to keep them straight. It's going to naturally kind of curve a little bit, and that's cool. So just take those, and then every now and then, how about this one here? You want to maybe put a branch or two, because trees have branches, and so you could just see the illusion of a forest kind of coming together here. And then so with that, you want to run your lighter color, add in some light green. Not too much. These oil paints, the color is so strong, it muddies really quick, and that's one of the challenges of oil painting. You got to keep it from mudding together, and you do that by not painting the whole thing. You got less is more almost with the oil painting, so you got to exercise some restraint. And if you've got some spaces in between there, initially that may look like a bad thing, but it's going to turn out okay. Like look here, for example, there's no trees here. And that's okay. I think it turned out great, because with this gap, you can see where that mountain just naturally starts going this way. You can actually see the back of that mountain. And so the trees aren't completely covering this thing up. You can see a little here. And so that's okay. That's what nature does. So give some things a little bit of space and some breathing room. And at the end of the painting, when you look at these oil paintings, like a day later, 2 days later, it's amazing the things that come out of the painting that you do not see while you're actually doing it. It's pretty wild. All right, so now, typically what I do is I use the knife, and I'm going to go into a color, some white, some brown, some black. And so these tree trunks that are coming to the foreground, they're going to need some highlight color in order for them to stand out. So I'm going to add some there, there, and there. And so to do the trunk, you can see. So back to the little roll of paint that you did the mountains. It is the same exact technique. So you're running that through the paint, creating a little roll at the very tip of it. And with that, you're going to start at the bottom and just take it to the side. Move up and then take it to the side. I hope you said that okay. Move up and just take it to the side. And of course, I mean, when I'm painting, like I'm all in it because you got to make sure you're getting your angles just right. And so you just do the same thing for those trees. And you kind of go up with it. And that's going to give your trunks the highlight they need in order to make look like really good trees. And then from there, you can add some more branches. Then and only then are you ready to put the base highlights on your trees. So again, even though you got your branches, you've got your stem and your trunk, you still want to put background leaves on top of your colored leaves. Because again, it's layers upon layers upon layers. And that's what's going to make your tree look really, really real. And so again, dark colors, black, brown, maybe some dark green into it. By this time, you've got like a muddied mix of some darker colors. And then that's what you drop in your leaves. Drop them in there, drop them in there, drop them in there, drop them in there. But not too much. If you go crazy, you're going to cover your entire background and you're going to cover parts of your mountain. Have you ever seen a pink tree? Well, you have now. Actually, you probably have. Here in the southeast, we've got things called redbud trees that are blooming now. You know, they're not all, it's not a huge circular tree of just a big green blob. You know, this is spaces. And I think for this, I think I went into the light green and then I just went into the fan brush and started just pushing them up as I went up like that. And then for your evergreen trees, you know, that's kind of how you do the evergreen trees. And then you take that base green color and you just start making the ground, making the grass. And I usually kind of swoop them all together. But on top of that, I want to make some clovers. I want to make some leaves. This is where, you know, if we're really out in the nature, no one's been mowing this yard. Maybe some animals have been grazing on it. But I can give the illusion of some grass just by pulling some of these parts up. And if you were really, really close, you could see that. And then here, you can tell where this is a completely different color. This is not green. I went straight with the yellow. And at first, I'm thinking, man, that's nuts. I can't add, no one has yellow grass. But when you look at the finished product, you can really see it looks really good. It looks like highlighted grass, or maybe it's some daisies or whatever kind of flowers that may be. Last but not least was the rocks. And so just like mountains, these were kind of a challenge to me. You have a special brush called the filbert brush. And that's where the brush is really rounded. And the idea is for you to load it with one color, and then on the other side, you've got a darker color, and you just flip. You just, like that. You just make them like that. I've not had great success with that. I just like taking the knife with the same painting technique of the roll paint that we used on the mountains and the tree trunks, cut it through, nice little roll of paint at the end, and I just drop it in. Bob says you got to make those sound effects too, or it won't work as well. Just drop in some of those rocks, almost like a miniature mountain. And you can even put a little highlight in there. For me, I like doing the rocks using the knife. I think it works better, and I think it looks better, me personally. But no rocks are complete without putting some grass at the bottom. You don't want to cover these up because you worked hard on them and they looked good. But you do want to put some grass around them. And then just finish your painting out. So anyway, this one sold like in a matter of seconds. As soon as I told him it was up for grabs, he bought it. And I'm glad he did. He's going to really like it. And so this is a pretty cool painting. It's kind of sentimental to me because it was just prior to where COVID happened. And it's got a good story to this painting here that I'll just keep between us. It's actually a pretty funny story about how this painting came to be. Anyway, so that's a funny story. I don't know if I'll share that. But anyway, this painting is pretty cool because these mountains turned out absolutely dynamite. The trees are popping out, even have some pink red buds in here. I've not seen something like that in a long time. And this was painted right prior to COVID coming out. And so it's going to a great friend of mine down in Texas. And I hope he's happy with it. And it turned out awesome. And I'm glad that it's going to find a really good home to it. And so I just wanted to do a video kind of explaining about how do you get here. You know, sometimes you can get lost in the steps and you feel like it's going to take 4 hours, but how did it really come together, just almost as a synopsis. So I hope you found this enjoyable, and like, comment, and subscribe for more. Thanks. See you soon.